Today, let's explore together how to approach feelings of being trapped and find pathways to psychological freedom. If you've ever felt suffocated by your circumstances, desperately wanting to escape but not knowing how, you're not alone. This overwhelming sensation of entrapment affects millions worldwide, and understanding the science behind it can offer genuine hope and practical solutions. Current research suggests that feelings of entrapment are more than just temporary discomfort. A comprehensive 2023 study involving 367 college students from South Korea examined the relationships between entrapment, depression, and cognitive control. The research found that entrapment functions as what scientists call a transdiagnostic element, meaning it appears across various mental health conditions including depression, anxiety, and even suicidal ideation. This research helps us understand that feeling trapped isn't a personal failing, but a recognized psychological phenomenon with identifiable patterns and solutions. Recent findings from 2024 published in peer-reviewed medical journals reveal that what psychologists term experiential avoidance plays a central role in maintaining trapped feelings. Experiential avoidance refers to our unwillingness to engage with uncomfortable personal experiences, including difficult emotions, thoughts, memories, and physical sensations. When we consistently avoid these experiences, we inadvertently create cycles that reinforce the sense of being trapped. The research shows this avoidance behavior contributes directly to anxiety and stress-related mental disorders by preventing us from developing healthy coping mechanisms. A multi-center study conducted in Turkey between June and October 2023 found significant correlations between escapism, coping strategies, and mental health outcomes. The researchers discovered that when people feel trapped in difficult life situations, they often turn to maladaptive avoidance behaviors, which paradoxically increase their sense of entrapment rather than providing genuine relief. This creates what scientists call a feedback loop, where avoidance leads to more feelings of being trapped, which leads to more avoidance. Neuroscience research demonstrates that entrapment perception activates specific brain circuits associated with our fight or flight response. When we perceive ourselves as trapped, our brains interpret this as a threat, triggering stress hormones and defensive responses. However, when this activation becomes chronic, it can lead to what researchers call learned helplessness, where we begin to believe we have no control over our circumstances even when options exist. The encouraging news is that latest findings show targeted interventions can help rewire these neural pathways, creating new routes for psychological freedom. A particularly interesting 2025 study revealed that avoidance behaviors increase what scientists call threat generalization. This means that the more we avoid confronting situations where we feel trapped, the more our brains begin to perceive even neutral or safe situations as threatening. The research found that relentless avoidance blurs our perceptual memory, making new situations appear more dangerous and inescapable than they actually are. Let's explore 5 scientifically backed methods that can help break free from feelings of entrapment while prioritizing your safety and long-term well-being. The first method is called immediate entrapment recognition, based on cognitive behavioral therapy principles. This involves practicing what researchers call the TRAP assessment daily. TRAP stands for thoughts, asking yourself, what am I thinking right now? Reality, examining what's actually happening versus what I'm interpreting. Avoidance, identifying what situations or feelings am I avoiding. And power, recognizing what aspects of this situation I can actually control. Research in cognitive psychology shows that this type of metacognitive awareness, thinking about our thinking, helps interrupt automatic thought patterns that maintain feelings of entrapment. The mechanism works by engaging the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for executive functioning and rational decision-making. When we actively examine our thoughts and circumstances, we activate neural pathways that can override the more primitive fear responses that contribute to feeling trapped. The second approach is strategic exposure therapy, adapted from anxiety disorder treatment. This involves starting with what researchers call micro-exposures, lasting just 30 seconds, to situations you've been avoiding. The scientific basis for this method comes from learning theory and neuroplasticity research. When we gradually expose ourselves to avoided situations in small, manageable doses, we allow our nervous system to learn that these situations are not as dangerous as our trapped feelings suggest. The key is gradual progression, increasing exposure time by 15 to 30 seconds weekly based on your comfort level. This method works because it helps desensitize the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, while building confidence through successful experiences. The research shows that micro-exposures are particularly effective because they prevent overwhelm while still providing enough challenge to promote growth. The third method involves cognitive restructuring specifically designed for entrapment thoughts. This technique, rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy research, involves challenging trapped feelings with what therapists call the evidence court method. You literally list evidence for and against the belief that you're completely stuck. Psychology research demonstrates that our brains have a tendency called confirmation bias, where we notice information that confirms our existing beliefs while ignoring contradictory evidence. When feeling trapped, we often focus only on limitations while overlooking possibilities. The evidence court method counteracts this bias by forcing our attention toward a more balanced perspective. Replace absolute thinking patterns like, I'm completely stuck, with possibility-focused thoughts like, I have limited options right now, but options do exist. This cognitive shift activates problem-solving networks in the brain rather than threat detection systems. The fourth approach is behavioral activation, a technique extensively researched in depression treatment. This involves choosing one small action daily that moves you toward your values, even when feeling trapped. The scientific foundation comes from research showing that behavior can influence mood and cognition, not just the reverse. When we take value-based actions despite feeling trapped, we create what psychologists call behavioral evidence that contradicts our trapped feelings. The research recommends starting with the 5-minute rule, committing to just 5 minutes of meaningful action when feeling overwhelmed. This works because it bypasses the motivation requirement. We don't need to feel motivated to take small actions, and these small actions can actually generate motivation through a process called behavioral momentum. Create what researchers call a freedom action list of 20 small steps you can take regardless of circumstances, then track completion to build evidence of your agency and capability. The fifth method focuses on social connection expansion, based on extensive research in social psychology and attachment theory. Isolation often intensifies feelings of being trapped, while connection provides perspective and support. The research suggests reaching out to one person weekly who represents growth or possibility in your life. Join one community, either online or offline, related to your interests within the next 2 weeks. Practice what vulnerability researcher Brené Brown calls courage over comfort by sharing your trapped feelings with one trusted person monthly. The scientific mechanism here involves what psychologists call social buffering, where supportive relationships actually change our physiological stress responses. When we feel connected and supported, our nervous systems shift from defensive states to what researchers call social engagement, making problem-solving and creative thinking more accessible. Each of these methods works most effectively when you practice them during calm moments to build neural pathways before crisis situations arise. Start with whichever method feels about 20% challenging, not overwhelming. Research in habit formation shows that small, consistent changes are more sustainable than dramatic overhauls. Use environmental cues like sticky notes or phone reminders to support these new practices, and celebrate what researchers call micro-victories, each small moment when you choose growth over avoidance. Common pitfalls to avoid include attempting all methods simultaneously, which can create overwhelm rather than progress. Research in cognitive load theory suggests focusing on 1 to 2 new behaviors at a time for optimal learning. Avoid perfectionist thinking about implementation, as 60% consistency often proves more effective than perfect planning that never gets implemented. Don't wait for motivation to strike, as action despite feeling trapped actually builds evidence of your capabilities. Expect setbacks as part of the normal growth process rather than evidence of failure. To summarize what we discussed today, first, entrapment is a feeling, not a permanent reality, and recognizing this distinction can begin to create space for possibilities. Second, avoidance behaviors, while providing temporary relief, actually increase the sense of being trapped long-term by preventing us from learning that difficult situations are manageable. Third, micro-exposures allow us to build freedom muscles safely over time by gradually expanding our comfort zones without overwhelming our nervous systems. Fourth, your thoughts about being stuck are interpretations, not facts, and challenging these thoughts can reveal options you may have overlooked. Fifth, small daily actions aligned with your values create massive change over months by building momentum and evidence of your capability. Sixth, connection with others breaks the isolation trap by providing perspective, support, and reminder that you're not alone in these struggles. These methods represent current best practices in psychology and neuroscience for addressing feelings of entrapment. While individual results may vary, research consistently shows that people who implement these strategies often experience gradual but meaningful improvements in their sense of agency and psychological freedom. Remember that seeking professional support from a licensed therapist can provide additional personalized guidance for your specific situation. The journey from feeling trapped to experiencing psychological freedom is rarely linear, and that's completely normal. Be patient with yourself as you implement these evidence-based approaches. Small, consistent steps forward are more valuable than dramatic changes that can't be sustained. If today's discussion provided any support or new perspective, please hit the like button. If you'd like to continue learning about mental health and psychological well-being together, please subscribe to the channel. May your hearts feel a little lighter, and remember that you have more options and strength than your trapped feelings might suggest. Thank you for listening until the end today, and take care of yourselves.